Hello, my name is Stephen Denman. My organisation is Shining Guidance. My website is shiningguidance.com. I'd like to talk to you today about genetic inheritance issues in reference to Autism Spectrum Disorder or ASD conditions. Now, from all available and current and new scientific research that's been done, around 8 out of 10 or 80% of individuals with Autism Spectrum Disorder or ASD conditions tend to have inherited genetic factors from the paternal line, that's from the father or grandfathers, in the family. Now, this new research into the genetic connections with Autism Spectrum Disorder or ASD conditions was done in 5 countries, and as I just said, they found that 8 out of 10 or 80% of those individuals with Autism Spectrum Disorder or ASD conditions could trace their risk back to inherited genetics rather than environmental factors or random medical anomalies or, shall we say, microcellular mutations of some nature. Now, this study, which was developed over many weeks and was finalised, and then it was printed up and produced on the 18th of July 2019 in the JAMA Psychiatry Journal, which is published by the American Medical Association, or the AMA, where they analysed the data of around 2 million individuals across a set number of countries that included Denmark and Sweden, Finland, I think Israel, and Western Australia. And it was the largest family-centred genetic-based autism spectrum disorder ASD study that has been done to date, and it included many children with autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions, their siblings and cousins, as well as the fathers and mothers of those children. Previous scientific studies were expanded upon because they included family members, and the data from the different countries was looked at from the perspective of the different autism health systems that are used in these countries. And this is according to the excellent research of Dr. Joseph Buxbaum, who is the American molecular and cellular neuroscientist, who's also an autism researcher and is one of the main study authors, and is the professor of psychiatry and the director of the SIVA Autism Center at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Chicago, Illinois. Now, he truly believes from his own scientific research that the strongest contributory factors to the risk of autism spectrum disorder or ASD in children and teenagers are most definitely from inherited genetics, which mainly come from the paternal line of the father or the grandfathers in the family. So spontaneous genetic changes and other, shall we say, more microscale factors could not be effectively estimated in the studies, but can still be seen as additional contributory factors to the risk of autism spectrum disorder or ASD. In addition to the main results of the study, it was found that 20% or even 0% risk is associated with autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions from the maternal genetic line. That's the maternal line of the mother or the grandmothers in the family. Discernible factors could include, for example, though, chronic health and medical conditions that are consistent across perhaps each specific stage of the pregnancy of the expectant mother of the child. That's one aspect that wasn't fully taken into account because they didn't factor that in for data aggregation purposes in the original study. So the maternal genetic aspects of the study that was produced on the 18th of July 2019 in the JAMA Psychiatry Journal, which is published by the American Medical Association, or the AMA, did though reveal a very clever use of specific types of analytical approaches based on using relatively small numbers of maternally linked cousin pairs with autism spectrum disorder ASD, which could then be studied, but however that could not be ascertained on a more generalized level, acceptable, shall we say, on a more local, regional, national or global level as a general rule as to which specific maternal line genetic factors possibly may be involved, or medical issues. So again, it was kind of almost like a side study to the main actual academic results. So any interaction between inherited genetic effects and environments are therefore difficult to fully model, while such an approach on a microscale level is being used. And we have to remember that this information I've just given here is the scientific opinion of Professor Margaret Danielle Fallin, who is an epidemiologist and the chairman of the Department of Mental Health at the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore in Maryland. So while the results confirm the very important role of inherited genetics as the main risk of autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions developing in children, it is a mistake, and an overwhelming one at that, to then conclude that you can just rule out any environmental risk factors, or shall we say long-term medical problems that may have arisen during the pregnancy stages of the expectant mother of a child that then goes on to develop after birth, what appears to be autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions. The study also showed, very interestingly, the wide range in genetic heritability data that results from the cultural background of each country concerning autism spectrum disorder or ASD. So across the towns and cities of Western Australia, for example, the data was on the lower end, whilst the countries of Denmark, Sweden and Finland and Israel reported much higher genetic heritability. So if a country tends to diagnose autism spectrum disorder, ASD, less frequently because of their own medical infrastructure, perhaps, and their own bureaucracies, which have resulted from the cultural differences in those countries, then the data providers who do the screening for autism spectrum disorder, or ASD conditions, aren't going to always pick up on the different types of genetic heritability factors because their own facilitation of such medical processes isn't in place in the first place to detect, those conditions. So therefore, it is not easy to estimate the contributory factor of random genetic variation from just this analysis alone, but we must understand the potency of genetic influences is critical for leading us towards understanding how to personalise proactive medical treatments and solutions of the future for the various individuals that have autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions. And this is fully the opinion of the Chief Science Officer, Professor Thomas Frazier, who works for Autism Speaks, which is a fantastic organisation. So therefore, individuals with autism spectrum disorder or ASD condition should be fully encouraged to speak with their mental health advocates or mental health support workers, obviously speak with their fathers and mothers. If they want, maybe even speak with a brother or a sister or close family members, even grandfathers, grandmothers, about genetic testing, and they should be encouraged by their parents to actively participate in genetic and scientific research where possible to further improve an understanding of the genetic hereditary factors of autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions. So I'd say that the information that these truly incredible individuals have given is really something that we should celebrate. I do think that the fantastic research of Dr. Joseph Buxbaum, who is the American molecular and cellular neuroscientist and autism researcher, and obviously one of the main study authors, and Professor of Psychiatry and the Director of the SIVA Autism Center at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Chicago, Illinois, and the fantastic work, for example, of the other individual that I mentioned, who is Professor Margaret Danielle Fallin, who is an epidemiologist and chairman of the Department of Mental Health at the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore in Maryland, and also the other individual I've just mentioned, who is the Chief Science Officer, Professor Thomas Frazier at the organisation Autism Speaks, should really be shown a lot of respect and recognition for the fantastic research and ongoing work they do, because they all do their work with a lot of empathy and love and care, because they truly want to improve the lifestyles of those individuals who have autism spectrum disorder. So I think I've given enough information. I decided that I don't want to go into too much more detail on this. I don't want to give even more scientific data in regards to sort of statistics and ratios. I think I've covered the main basis of what I want to discuss in this presentation. I really do Hope you've enjoyed watching the information that I've presented to you. I certainly have enjoyed presenting this video and the information within this video to you. And on that note, I'd like to say I hope you're all well. Please take care. There'll be many more videos to come in the near future. And on that note, I'd like to say also, thank you very much and goodbye.